Each morning ere the break of dawn, good old Static, our bell mare, would come clanging through camp, the cowbell strapped round her neck, banging out its clarion call. Arising from a sound sleep, our camp still in pre-dawn dusk, we looked across the basin towards Cahuilla Peaks, already catching the first rays of the new day's sun.
The Sierra Nevada is a difficult mountain range to travel, especially in the south. It rises as a tilted 400-mile-long block of the Earth's crust, unbroken by any river or valley across its 40 to 80-mile width. Its high country is one of the most inaccessible areas in the United States. Despite the obstacles, the range's vast resources and diverse natural beauty have brought people into its wilderness. From Yosemite to the Tehachapi, the Tuolumne River to the Kern, these lands, above and beyond any major roadways, are the wild areas where the majority of the modern Sierra mule packers have plied their trades. Throughout its human prehistory, North America had no mules, nor any other large animal suited to taming and harnessing.
In 3000 BC, archaeological evidence shows that the first asses were bred to horses to create the mule. And so for 5,000 years now, the mule has become one of the key components of the whole civilization.
The mule arrived on this continent in 1519 with the Spanish explorer Hernando Cortés, and it played a key role in the conquest of Mexico, providing the means to carry supplies and munition to inland territories.
They brought in horses as well as mules, and mule packing came to the Sierra Nevada of California.
Stock packing was one of the most significant industries of early California. For the past 2 centuries, the mining, stock grazing, lumbering, hydroelectric development, and recreation of the Sierra Nevada have all been dependent on mulemen willing to ply its rugged trails. Mulecraft was an honored art.
It is true that mules are often slow, ornery, mean, lazy, dirty, noisy, bothersome, peripatetic, and stubborn. And yet, they are comical, friendly, dependable, smart, uncomplaining, hard-working, sure-footed, easy-keeping, and long-lived,
wrote Ike Livermore in his trip journals from 1930 to 1939. The mule is the offspring of a male donkey and a female horse. They are more patient, sure-footed, hardy, and long-lived than horses, and they are considered less obstinate, faster, and more intelligent than donkeys.
Each one is different, and you have to treat them that way. They're just not another Ford truck. I learned a lot about mules from different old-time packers, but I learned the most from the mules themselves.
Much like their mules, the High Sierra packers are a breed of their own. Descendants of the pioneer, the mountain man, the cowboy, and the teamster, they are men and women who have chosen to forego the comforts of civilization and embrace the simplicity of the wilderness. Beginning in the 1890s, the creation of 3 new national parks, Yosemite, Sequoia, and General Grant, and the Forest Reserve System, generated a consistent source of income for the packers. The founding of the Sierra Club in 1892 created a new form of recreation for hundreds of California city dwellers.
The first big commercial packing that I can find was in 1903 when the Sierra Club took a trip into the Kern River and Mount Whitney and back through into Wolverton. I liked the story that Ord Lovern told me because he told me. And he was on that trip. He was 17 years old. Ord said they got all packed up with 60 mules, and they got up when just right under Farewell Gap, and they couldn't get over that night. So Ord says, we didn't have anything to tie all those mules to, so we just tied all the lash ropes together, and we tied a sack of beans on one end of that, a sack of beans on the other, and buried them in the snow. Now we had a picket line that tied all those mules to.
The early Sierra clubs were going in and staying a month at a time, you know, a month and a half, 2 months, maybe even all summer. When I think about some of them early packers going in with 150 head of pack animals, it just kind of blows me away.
To encourage tourism in the parks, the government launched major trail building and maintenance efforts, hiring local commercial packers to haul supplies. In 1928, the most profitable season in the history of commercial packing, the gross receipts for the local packers in the Three Rivers area were over $100,000. In the early 1930s, in the midst of the Great Depression, Ike Livermore suggested that all the packers on both sides of the Sierra get together and develop one true Packers Association. The High Sierra Packers Association was born. Just as the economy began to get better, packers faced a new challenge with the outbreak of the Second World War. Few tourists came to the Sierra during the war, and the outfits that survived depended in large part on government contracts. After the war, park contracts were becoming more scarce as the automobile and other forms of transportation increasingly replaced mule power. Nevertheless, with the improved economy, interest in and access to the wilderness grew. Soon, a new style of packer flourished. In tourist areas, full-service pack trips evolved into specialized cultural experiences. At the age of 15, a young Bill de Carteret was on the junior staff at a Boy Scout camp in Huntington Lake when the camp director brought 5 big burros up to give packing experiences to the kids. He spent his summers packing, first out of Huntington Lake and later Mineral King.
It was just 75 years ago that I rode a horse from Three Rivers into Mineral King, helping to drive 120 horses and mules for the summer work up there. They told me, head north and stay between the Needles Lookout and the Kern Canyon. That's a spectacular sight to come in over that gap and look down that valley.
After his first full season at Mineral King Pack Station in 1947, Bill was fired for asking for a raise. 11 years later, he bought the same station with a handshake and a loan.
The first year we were there, we went up there, and a couple from Porterville, an older couple, they wanted to ride to Monarch Lake. So, boy, here's a customer. And they paid me at the end of the trip. It was a $10 bill. And we were in business.
In the spring of 1965, Bill and his wife Marilyn purchased the Wolverton Pack Station. They now owned 2 pack stations, 110 horses and mules, a general store, dining room, 7 rental cabins, and a post office, which Marilyn ran as the last Mineral King postmaster.
We had various types of trips, and I liked the trips where the family went, and Dad could teach the kids how to gather wood and make a fire and just be a family unit.
In 1973, Bill and Marilyn decided to sell the Mineral King Pack Station. 9 years later, they sold the Wolverton Pack Station as well. Newcomers like Tim Shue entered the scene not long after. In the early 1980s, Tim was living in Nashville, Tennessee. After Tim's older brother was asked to reopen the Balch Park Pack Station, Tim followed him across the country to become a packer himself.
It's a lot different than it was in the early days. Most of my trips are 6 or 8 people, 10, 12, 15 head of horses. We pack them in, drop them off. They give us a date when they want to come out. We go back and pick them up and bring them out. You don't have as much impact. I think those are the way it was meant to be.
Tim and his wife raised their 3 children while running a pack station of their own. During the winter off seasons, Tim left his station, headed down into the Central Valley, and supplemented his income by substitute teaching. As the years passed on, Alex, his youngest daughter, began to take over the station.
I've been here my entire life, and there is nothing that in my mind or heart equates to what we have here. The trees, the mountains, the quietness. It's home.
Much like her father did, Alex spends the off seasons working in schools and spends the summers running the station. In the eyes of some packers, the future of this industry is grim. An increase in lightweight and affordable backpacking supplies have made the Sierra backcountry accessible by foot. There appears to be a lack of interest from the younger generations in accessing the backcountry through packing. They are looking to update the experience by offering more modern amenities and different types of excursions.
I really do want to keep the packing alive. I mean, that's always been such a passion of mine. And as you have the new generations coming up, we're going to implement platforms, the huge Cabela tents. We're going to have full beds in there with fire pits. So I think it could really open up to a whole new breed of customers up here.
The sequence for stock packing, going from then to now, in the beginning, everything was open to all. You made your way the best way you could. It's come now to where stock packing is open to almost nobody. It's restricted by government regulations, by environmental concerns, and very important, I think, it has gone from working as a part of and with nature, and it's become now that we are the custodians and stewards over nature. Happily, there are still some pack stations around that are open to people who can afford it, are open to having at least some of the experience, and I hope people will take advantage of it.
I don't think there was ever a packer that didn't swear in the fall he'd never go back to the mountains again. But every spring you got to looking up at those high peaks, and just one more year we're going to do it again. If I wasn't 93, I think I would go on another pack trip.
If you'd have told me I'd still be here 43 years later, I'd told you it's crazy, but you know, it's kind of funny how fate works sometimes. You know, every year I just can't wait to get back and enjoy Mother Nature at its finest up here.
For the packers, trips were not novel events. They were a way of life. It was an odd mix of hardship and pleasure, loneliness and camaraderie, sweating under the high-altitude sun, then sharing a tin cup at a refreshing stream, sitting in the glow of the fire after everyone else has gone to bed. It was beauty. It was fulfillment. It was the best that life could be.
I was so lucky to have lived in the years I did and did the things I did, the work I had, that I can't remember a day in my life that I had to go to work. Never.
Whatever the frustrations of being a mule man, he could never have any true regrets. Sam Lewis knew for a packer there was really no choice. You had dreams, he said. You had dreams and visions to work for.
And every effort was expended to bring about the realization of those dreams. Even yet, my thinking is geared to the horse and the freedom that goes with primitiveness.